From the LifeWord Studios, this is Life Perspectives with Michael Goering.
Joining me today is a former KGB spy who lived undercover in the U.S. for a decade, Jack Barsky. Jack, thanks for being on the program. I've looked forward to this.
My pleasure.
So, Jack, can you take us back to your early life, perhaps in East Germany? What was it like growing up behind the Iron Curtain?
It was actually, I had come to that conclusion after rethinking all of this. It wasn't, my childhood wasn't that bad. My parents were both teachers, so we were like middle class, so to speak. I grew up in the country, but my father was the first one who had a private vehicle. We had vacations on the Baltic Sea. Poverty, though, played a role in that our medical system was horrendous. No medication. I was constantly sick. Whatever bug was floating around, I caught it, but there was no medicine. And the one thing that was really, really damaging in my childhood was that my parents took good care of me and my brother, but they never gave us the love that young children desire. And that made me grow up loveless and not knowing how to love, and not until a long time later did find out the powerful emotion love actually is. And I'm not talking about falling in love with a woman and for obvious reasons. So, and the other thing is it was really, really formative of my personality was systematic brainwashing. Starting from kindergarten. If the Communist Party did something really well, they took care of us, quote unquote, the next generation of leaders, incredibly well. It started in kindergarten. It went on to middle school, high school, university, and at college we had several mandatory courses to take in Marxism-Leninism, and they called it scientific Marxism-Leninism. And so when you hear nothing but one message and nobody ever says anything against it, then that's the absolute truth. Sure. And again, and I said they did this really well. It was age appropriate. It was age, kindergarten, we had like little cartoons that we played with. And there were the evil capitalists and there were the oppressed workers, and that just like sunk in. And if I may, this is really critical to me becoming, signing up for the espionage business with the KGB. In our senior year in high school, it was mandatory that all high school classes would visit a concentration camp. Now, high school in East Germany, if you went to high school, you were already guaranteed a job, a position at a college. Only about 25% of all students were even advancing to high school. Everybody else got themselves a job or a trade, learned a trade. So we went to a concentration camp, and it was incredibly depressing when you walk in there and you see the rotunda, the building the welcoming building was a rotunda. You walk in there, and they had these very, very much enlarged photographs of piles of people, dead people. They had even more gruesome exhibits. I mean, there wasn't just one picture; there were multiple. So you were surrounded by death.
Well, what year was this?
I was, in my senior in high school. What year? Born in '49. Add 14 years.
Okay.
So I'm not very good with the adding anymore. I used to have a computer in here, but this is one of the things that goes when you get older. So anyway, so these pictures, but in addition, there were some other exhibits that were even more gruesome. There were two glass cases that had shrunken heads in them. I mean, heads that had sat on two people's shoulders. They were killed, and the heads were shrunken. Okay, and on top of it, also several lamps with lampshades that were made out of human skin.
Hmm.
These lampshades were made on behest of the wife of the commandant, who picked out incoming new prisoners that had nice tattoos, and they had them killed and skinned. So when you see something like that, we were a rowdy bunch, and when we were on the bus to that place, we were singing and having fun, and all the boys got silent, and the girls started crying. And now comes the brilliant moment that was so extremely well organized. We were led into the room where the gas chamber, and right next to it there was another room where people were executed without even knowing that they were about to be executed. There was they was supposed to be measured, okay, and the measuring slat had a hole in it that was then aligned with a hole in the wall, and at that point, the person who was standing with a head back, they couldn't see anything. They were supposed to be measured. At that point, a gunshot was fired into the neck, and people were executed, just like that. Boof. And here's where the brilliance comes in. The head of the German Communist Party, by the name of Ernst Thälmann, was arrested when the Nazis took over. And it is a historic fact. No historian will deny that the only force that fought the brown shirts in the streets physically were the communists. That doesn't mean that they were good guys. They were fighting for their own dominance. But historically, they were fighting Adolf Hitler in hand-to-hand combat and in the streets. And so Thälmann was executed. But eventually he was arrested, eventually taken to the concentration camp and executed. So now put two and two together. So we, at that time, when we were in the concentration camp, there was already the East Germany and West Germany were separate states. And we knew that there were some Nazis, ex-Nazis in the West German government. Most notably, one chancellor had been a member of the Nazi Party, and even more importantly, the head of the Bundesnachrichtendienst, Reinhard von Gehlen. Bundesnachrichtendienst is the CIA of Germany, intelligence agency. The head of the Bundesnachrichtendienst had served under Hitler in a leading role on the Eastern Front. He was so we knew there were Nazis over there, and we knew that the Nazis were actually co-opted by the Americans. So we knew that we were right and they were wrong. I mean, it was, you add to this all these gruesome pictures, you walk away convinced 100% that if you wanted to do something good, you got to fight for communism. Sorry, that was a long story, but
no, it's riveting, and I think it leads us into this next question. You're talking about being brainwashed from kindergarten up. What made you the ideal recruit for the KGB? And I guess what was that recruitment process? Was that a gradual thing, or was it a sudden thing?
That's a really good question, because I usually have to volunteer the answer.
Hmm.
Uh, Obviously, they were looking for communists, right? I mean, it couldn't be
Hmm.
just some student who hadn't had not been a member of the party. But I found out what they were looking for uh, after the KGB, the Soviet Union fell apart and KGB got dissolved. The number of interviews were given by retired uh, heads of the Directorate S, and that's like a department, and that was the illegals department. And they actually shared what they were looking for as far as candidates are concerned. Again, number one, they had to be communists. Number two, they had to be really smart. And I was on record, mind you, I'm not claiming to have been the smartest, but on
Sure.
record, I was the smartest student in the entire university and
Wow.
one of the top students in the entire country because I had received the Karl Marx scholarship, which was limited to only 100 concurrent holders.
Wow.
So when they were fishing around, and I guarantee you they had access to the records that the Stasi kept on the adults in the country, and they looked at my profile. They said, "Oh, a smart communist. Let's talk to him." And then
Hmm.
they were looking for, and that did not result in recruitment. That resulted in saying hello. And then they spent 18 months studying me
Hmm.
to see if I have the other traits that they were looking for. Now, and these are like pretty much given to you at birth. Fearlessness, no problem taking a risk, no problem with picking up and picking up a suitcase and moving someplace else. No problem saying, no, not very attached, emotionally attached. Also, I like when I said fearlessness, they were looking for well-controlled inclination for adventure. That's what they called it.
Hmm.
And then there was another one that needs to be translated. It says very, very good in fluid situations. Translated means being able to make up a lie on the spot and a credible
Hmm.
lie. And I, I can still do this today. uh, but I can make up a whole lot of things my brain had never thought about it just in conversation. So they were looking for a combination of these character traits plus the communism and the fact that I didn't have any relatives in the West. That was very important because I can't go there. I was supposed to go to West Germany. I can't go there and say and pretend to be somebody who I wasn't. So anyway,
Yeah.
uh, it took them 18 months, and they also were looking obviously for somebody who they can trust.
Hmm.
And I was and still am wired to tell the truth. And so that fellow that I worked with unofficially, we had a lot of talk, man-to-man talks. He became like a father to me because my father had left uh, the family. So I let him know everything. I let him know things that when I made a mistake that nobody else knew that I made a mistake. That's a very interesting way of faking, to be honest. I
Hmm.
tell you that. But in my case, it was all honest, and apparently, I came across like the right guy. And so, after the 18 months, I finally got the question uh, whether I was ready to join. That was I wasn't prepared for that.
Hmm.
Uh, this was, the pretext was for me to. They sent me to Berlin for a week uh, because I studied in a smaller town south of Berlin to get a little more training for a week. They did not tell me what was going to come, and this is another one. There's a lot of things that the KGB would never tell people that they worked with. In this cases, it was the surprise factor. They wanted to surprise me. So I got a little training. I met an agent there, and he trained me a little bit, not much. And the last day of my trip to Berlin, he took me to the headquarters, which was the headquarters of the Soviet Army and the KGB. And there I met, most likely, these people weren't introduced to me. This guy wasn't even introduced with a cover name. In his office, a very, very richly decorated office with a lot of communist propaganda and the bust of Felix Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the KGB, the Cheka, which became the KGB, on his desk. And, he started out with some small talk, all in Russian, which I mostly understood because we had Russian in middle school, high school, and in college. I didn't have to say anything in Russian. I answered in German. And then all of a sudden, like, out of the blue, he said, "So what? Are you going to sign up or not?" And I was not. I had not thought this through. I was just toying with the idea. It was fun, and the whole idea of being able to travel where normal East German citizens couldn't go. The whole idea of living the life of a James Bond-like character, because we had our own fictional James Bond in East Germany. All of that was very inviting, but I also had a home in the town where I studied. I was already on my way to become a tenured professor because my study was accelerated. I finished 6 months prior to everybody else, and I was hired right away. So, no doubt I would have my ego, which was highly developed in those days, was looking forward to becoming a member of the elite in town, because in that town, it was a college town. The tenured professors were considered like the cream of the crop. And the other thing is the other thing that would have I had to think about is if I had a passion for anything other than girls that I hadn't much luck with. If I had a passion for anything, that was the game of basketball. I was in the starting lineup of the college team, and these were all my close friends, not the guys that studied chemistry side by side with me. These guys, because we were a team.
Yeah.
And that one would have held me back. What would have held me back if I had a steady girlfriend, but I didn't. But so here's the thing. At the point I said I wasn't prepared. So I said, I played for time. I said to the guy, well, I don't know if I qualify. And in any event, I don't have a lot of training. And this guy, in his stentorian metallic voice, as strong as I've ever heard somebody speak, he said, "Don't worry, you are qualified and we will train you, but we only work with people who can make important life decisions in a short time. You got until noon tomorrow to say yes or no." He didn't say yes or no. He said, "Give me an answer." So he didn't give the no a possibility, but in hindsight, I know it was a possibility, because you don't force somebody into that kind of a job. You don't.
Sure.
Because the moment you do that, the first time they get a chance, they defect. So anyway, so that made for a sleepless night. And just to answer the question that you might have in your head, what made me say yes? Two things. First of all, my communist ideology. You don't do something that dangerous unless you know you serve a bigger cause. And secondly, and I already pointed out to that, my ego. I was recruited by what I knew was the most powerful intelligence agency on the planet. Was I somebody or what?
Yeah.
So yeah, I said yes blindly, not knowing what was going to come. I had no idea.
So what was coming was eventually you're tasked with coming to America, right? What year was that?
When I came to the United States?
Yes.
1978.
Okay. So 1978, you're sent to America. What was the primary mission or objective that they were
The
sending you to the States for?
the primary mission was to settle in the United States as a born American, integrate as well in society as possible. There were some secondary missions, but in hindsight, again, in these interviews that I mentioned, uh, us illegals, and there weren't too many of us, being in the United States was very important to the KGB because all the other spies in those days were all diplomats. And during the height of the Cold War, there was a lot of CIA versus KGB warfare, and diplomats were kicked out when they were found out that they did something that wasn't diplomatic in nature, and then there was retaliation back and forth, and the diplomatic missions of both sides were reduced, and God forbid. And again, this is hindsight, but this is 100%. That guess is 100% accurate based on facts. Uh, in those days, the most successful agents for the KGB in the United States were two American citizens, moles. Robert Hansen, who was a senior member of the FBI,
Wow.
and Aldrich Ames, who was also in a senior position in the in the CIA. Both of them did a tremendous amount of damage to the United States. They both of them provided information that got a lot of American assets and Russians who worked with the CIA killed. And so, if all the diplomats are gone, the only people that could interact with those traitors would be us illegals. And I have good reason to believe that there was some thought of me interacting with Aldrich Ames anyway, simply because 2 years before I actually quit the KGB, and I was in Moscow for some debriefing and rest and relaxation, I was asked a question whether I was ready to do something quite a bit more dangerous than my normal existence in the U.S. I said yes. So they gave me a task to find a spot for a dead drop. You're familiar with what that is,
Yes,
right?
yes, sure.
And to explain to your audience, it's a dead drop is when you hand over not information, but things that have a size, money, a passport. You put it in a container, you throw it someplace, and somebody else picks it up.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. So they asked me to find a spot for a dead drop in New Hampshire, and with a provision that that dead drop should be able to hold something sizable, like a briefcase or a small suitcase. And I know, based on FBI surveillance videos, that and based on there's a lot known about Ames and Hansen, that Ames particularly handed over piles of paper in boxes and whatever. He in those days you know he couldn't have a camera. He shouldn't have had a camera because if it can't this anyway, he just copied paper. And they never. I found the spot, but they never followed through with this. Apparently, the diplomats were still there, and Ames continued to do his damage without my assistance. Thank God. Yeah. So this is a long answer to the. That's the first part of the answer. The second part is unofficially in secondary tasks. They were not as important, but they were. They thought that we were valuable as spotters. The mantra was always get to know more people, and profile them to see if they have access to secrets or could have access to secrets, like the students, because I went to college.
So you could have been basically a handler for.
Not a handler.
Okay.
Only
Okay.
spotter. So when we're talking about recruiting and running an agent, there's usually three people involved. It's the spotter who points the person. Then
Okay.
there's the recruiter, and then there's the handler. And the three don't know one another.
Wow. Okay. Very
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah. And so,
So
I was going to be spotter, and they never told me. One time they made a mistake because I determined that they were recruiting one person that I actually suggested. And the reason that that I figured that out, they apparently had contact with him, and then the guy moved. He probably just ran away, whatever, and they couldn't find him anymore. So they asked me to find out where he lives, because I actually was also friends with his brother. So, but that was highly unusual. Okay.
yeah.
Everything was always super secret, and then periodically I was asked to write reports as to the reaction of the American people to certain world events. Now you wonder, is that really valuable? Yeah, again, in hindsight, I'm thinking, sure, because us illegals, however few there were, and I know only of one other, the KGB in my time trained 10 of us, and that is knowledge that came directly out of the KGB archives. And I guarantee you, at least half of them failed. This kind of thing had to fail. Even the last batch of illegals, they were the SVR agents that were captured in 2010. I mean, they all failed massively. Anyway, we were the only ones that had daily interaction with real Americans. You know, the diplomats interacted with them, but they all spoke with an accent, and they were known to be Russian. Do you think Americans would tell them what they really think?
No.
No. So what they did when they wrote their reports, they copied stuff from the New York Times and the Washington Post. I had real feedback. So it must have been valuable because, there was no other way for the Central Committee of the Soviet Union to understand which way the American people are leaning with regard to, for instance, things like when the Russians shot down the North Korean plane and killed all the people. What was the reaction to that, and so forth? So that was it. I mean, they had big dreams of me, making friends with folks at Columbia University, where Zbigniew Brzezinski was a professor, and he was. They had a department. I forgot what it's called, that dealt with foreign affairs. And he, at one point, was the national security advisor of President Carter. That was a pipe dream. I was not positioned in society to have a reasonable explanation why I would hang out at Columbia University. I got that much later because when I was already an executive in corporate America, I joined a bunch of other executives and mentored graduate students at Columbia. So that would have given me long term. If I had stayed and if I had been a loyal Russian serving the motherland, I would have been really dangerous.
Yeah.
I also worked for a company that owned a nuclear plant, and I worked for a company that runs the electric grid of one electric grid in the United States. I can't disclose the name of the company.
So Jack, we all of this is important as a backstory because there's something that happens in your life, and this is what I'm most intrigued about. You've talked about how your Christian faith played a major role in your transformation. What led you to Christ?
It's more like who led me to Christ.
Okay.
Okay. Literally. So I as an atheist, as a hardcore atheist, I knew that all Christians were dumb people, and they used their faith only as a crutch because they were just incompetent. Now, as I started my career in corporate America, I met a few Christians, and they were anything but dumb. So, and they were believing in something I thought was still a fairy tale, but I walked away from that radical atheism that didn't make any sense. Because the other thing is, some of those Christians were, when I started in management, they turned out to be, if they were true to their Christian faith, they turned out to be the best employees.
Hmm.
So I just didn't want to deal with, I didn't want to think about it some more. I became an agnostic. And I was an agnostic when that someone popped up in my life. And I tell you, in hindsight, this was orchestrated. This was Jesus Christ fishing for me, because he very, very often, it isn't that you go out and reach for him.
Right.
He also wants you. And in hindsight, why was I such a high value target for Christianity? Because when I give similar to rehabilitated ex-mafia people, criminals, the testimony from an ex-atheist KGB agent is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And I nowadays, every morning in my prayers, I thank God how he set me up to be able to talk to you today and share the faith. And it never fails. It's always incredibly powerful, even when I'm not at my best. It's just the story is so incredible. So anyway, and so the systematic nature of it, I needed, and I can spend now an hour and a half. This is part of my testimony, talking about all the dots that had to be connected for me to actually become a believer. So the first thing that happened to me, I was in that one company where I had a dedicated executive assistant, and she quit on me. So I needed a replacement. I interviewed a few people on the phone, and this one was a standout. I had interviewed maybe half a dozen while I was driving home on my way home. First of all, she spoke with a British accent, very like a touch of a British accent. She later on, I found out she went to finishing school. She was born and raised in Jamaica, but she went to an English finishing school. And her resume was outstanding. She had worked as a bilingual secretary for the United Nations. That's how she came to the U.S. That had to happen too, by the way. And the reason that she was bilingual, she actually was an exchange student and learned, and she still speaks fluent French today. So that wasn't that important to me, but United Nations, wow. So that was a slam dunk for me to call her in for an in-person interview. But then she put the brakes on. She said, "I got to tell you one thing. I can't do overtime. I'm a Christian, and I'm going to a Bible college in the evening."
Wow.
That was proactive and would have turned the atheist in me off. I would say, "Thank you for talking with me. Good luck." All right. Yeah, but she was so good and so smart. And I got to interview this lady. And as I was driving home, I was thinking, well, I hope she's not a holy roller. By my atheistic definition of a holy roller, I would say that would have been the case.
Okay.
But I was already, I had made a step. So now something else had to happen for her to do her job. first of all, she had to be hired. Oh, she aced the interview. Then the HR was involved, and a colleague of mine, I mean, bingo. Um, There's something else had to happen because she asked for more money than I could give her. So I convinced HR to give her a sign-on bonus. And she later told me that she had multiple offers. She was looking for a company with a sign-on bonus. She asked God actually to make, well, how to make the decision because she had solid offers based on who she was and the resume. So she got a sign-on bonus and she started working for me. And this was an unusual company. We did not have offices for the executives except for the CEO and HR. Everybody else was on the floor. And so I'm sitting diagonally across from my new administrative assistant by the name, and she will be very proud to be named by name now, Shauna. And so we were in each other's space all the time. She overheard me calling at home. I overheard some things. We small talked a lot, and the one thing I forgot to mention when we interviewed her. She was sitting in a small office, and I walked in there. And HR says, "She's yours now." I took a look at her, and I went like, "Oh." It was love at first sight. Now, never happened to me before, never happened after that I fell in love with a beautiful face. And I think in hindsight, and she wasn't even my type, so to speak, but I can only explain that the Holy Spirit put a glow on her face that I have seen in other people, including men. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I was in love with my admin. That was not a good idea. So
Problematic. Yeah.
yes, I hid it. I hid it even from her, but I made myself useful. She was the head of a household. She took care of her mother and a son in school, and she had no functioning male in her life. So when there was some manly tasks to be done in her apartment, I helped out. Every Monday, I brought her a drink from her favorite. I don't know. It wasn't Starbucks then, but something like that. And she did what she normally does. She started evangelizing me. Now, I wanted to put a stop to this just proactively. We were encouraged to take new employees to lunch one time. So I took her to lunch. I still know where that was. And on the way back, we were in the vehicle. I was driving, and I wanted to be proactive. I said, "You know what? I really respect your faith because you're a great person. There's nothing I can find wrong with you. So I respect your faith. But don't you think for a moment that I ever will become a Christian?" And boldly she said, "You're already a Christian. You just don't know it." That was based on her watching me interacting with my direct reports and everybody else, and us having like conversations about love. We were both in a divorce situation. Both of them were pretty nasty, and so she instinctively knew that I would become a Christian. That was a prediction, and she started, and then the serious part of evangelizing me started with what she knew was the right place to start with, my brain.
Yeah.
Because I was, and I still am, a pretty smart guy. And she knew that I had a master's degree in chemistry. I was a scientist, and I used to do programming. So, but it started with something else, and that is where I think God actually knew that would happen. I was wired as a boss to get to know everybody in my organization. There were at one point about 200 personally, sit down with them one-on-one and figure out, what moves them, what do they like doing, what they don't like doing, and what they're good at. And with her, I didn't have to do that because, I saw what she does. But I said, you know what? I want to know one thing. You write really good business English. Let me see how good a writer you are. Because I always wanted to help people to go next step, whatever. That's the
Sure.
way I was wired. And God obviously knew that. That's pre-wired. So, and so she, I asked her for an essay she wrote for college, right? And she wisely picked an essay on the Book of Ruth
Wow.
that could not be misunderstood as, spreading the word of Jesus. It was a story, right? Anybody can read it and not thinking that they're being evangelized. So what was the outcome? I forget the link here, but the outcome was now my curiosity set in, and I said, for me to, it's really well written, but for me to know whether you did the original justice, I have to read the original. Well, she was prepared for that. She had a set of CDs from A to Z, the entire Bible. She says, here, you can listen to that. So the first thing I, jumped forward to the Book of Ruth, but my curiosity took over, and I started listening to this on my way home from just Genesis to all the way to the end. And what happened in between, when I mentioned my brain, Shauna noticed that I had interest and had some questions. And at one point, we actually set aside some time every Monday morning, and we did undercover Bible study in the office. It was on a calendar. It says, getting ready for the week or something like that.
Yeah.
But she said at one point, you're so curious about my faith. You need to listen to this guy, this fellow. And that was somebody you may know very well by name. He's not with us anymore, Dr. Ravi Zacharias. And his radio program was called Let My People Think.
Sure.
So, all right. So I'm turning him on. It was in the morning, and started listening to him. And he didn't have a really smooth radio voice, and I almost turned him off. But then he talked about something that was near and dear to my heart, because he talked about morality, and I had struggled with my own morality and lack thereof, having left my mother. At that time, I already knew that she passed away without knowing where I was. She actually was told by the KGB that I died in an accident, that I had left my mother, and even more importantly, my German wife and our son. And I really struggled with this and couldn't really process it. Now, Dr. Zacharias didn't give me an answer to that struggle, but he talked about a principle that is incredibly logical if you know people pretty well. When he talked about the statement that he made that I will never forget. First, he said, first of all, you know, listeners, that there is a universal human law. There's no other religion other than Christianity that will have an argument with most of what's in the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not lie. And I think, yeah, that's true. To the extent I knew a little bit about other religions. I knew a little bit about Buddhism because I had a friend who was a Buddhist. And then he made that critical statement. He said, if there is a universal law, there has to be a lawgiver.
Yes.
Yeah. Because a billion people will never get together and agree on everything. It's not possible.
Right.
Even 10 people can't agree. Sometimes it's even 2 of them. So where does that law come from? And that moment I became a deist. I had there was a rational belief in me that said there has to be a God. I didn't believe in a Christian God yet. That came later. And it started with, when I told Shauna what happened, she said, well, now you need to read C.S. Lewis. Okay. I read, I forget if I don't know if I say the title correctly, The Problem with Pain.
Yeah, sure.
But first Mere Christianity. And that was, Mere Christianity was so logical. And I compare this, the logic of C.S. Lewis with the mouth of a shark. Once you're in there, the teeth are positioned in such a way you can't get out.
Yeah, sure.
There is no counter argument.
Well, as a pastor, there's 2 books that I tell people to read if they're questioning Christianity's truthfulness, and one of those, from a secular, from a outside of the Bible point of view, is Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis, and then The Reason for God by Tim Keller. Both of those books, and Tim Keller was kind of a 21st century.
Yeah, I know about Tim Keller. We actually studied him in one of my churches.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying, so she really just kind of laid the foundation, and you began to do your own research and discovering that what Christianity claims is actual truth.
Okay. Well, there's another step that had to happen. That
Sure.
I tell you, I was a deist. I was a believer in God. And I even I audited a college course on C.S. Lewis. So that my curiosity, I was captured by the logic. Okay.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough. And I still did not believe in Jesus Christ. And I still not acknowledge that our God is the God. But this is where where she knew she can go to the next step. And she started, every Monday morning she would talk about how wonderful church was, and what the pastor was preaching on. And the music is so phenomenal. And I'm a sucker for good music, any kind of music. And in those days, I was still, I got my comfort listening to classical music, and I still do. And so eventually curiosity took over, and I said, so why don't you just take me one day? Again, she didn't invite me. I asked her.
Yeah.
So very, very clever. She knew exactly what she was doing. Had she invited me, I would have said, I don't know. But so here I am. This was a service on a Saturday afternoon, and we were going to meet in the parking lot. And she was late. I found out much later that she's always late. But no, I wouldn't go in by myself. Yeah, I was like, here's the fearless elite KGB agent, concerned, let's put it this way, somewhat afraid, going into an ongoing service where he did not know what to expect. There could have been like really a bunch of holy rollers.
Sure.
Maybe she didn't tell me the truth. Or there would be somebody at the door and takes me aside and say, do you know Jesus? And if you don't, you better come with me. That kind of thing. Like,
yeah, sure.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah.
So she came, and she's a lot shorter than me. Nevertheless, I made her go into the sanctuary ahead of me. And there was nobody at the door. And nobody even paid attention. And the music was good. And I like that. I mean, music actually speaks to my soul. I didn't know I had one in those days,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it makes me like, it makes me tingle here. The music was excellent. And then the pastor, of course, like that happens a lot to a lot of people. Then you go to service, and when the pastor starts talking, you know that he prepared this sermon exactly for you.
Yeah.
Well, this sermon was 100% for me. It was about the love of God. And that was obviously the Christian God. And I didn't count it, but he must have said the word love like 30, 40 times. And this is what I needed to hear, because that was the only time in my life where I was subject to lengthy depression, because the divorce situation that I was in was subject to two battling bad attorneys, one of them evil and the other one incompetent. That was mine. And it was dragging out and dragging out. And, you know, I was really looking for love like I had never looked for love before. I was love sick without knowing what and whom to love. I had a good young friend, an Indian lady who I once shared with. She knew me instinctively very well. And I once shared with her, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to go look for love anymore. And this is just not working for me. And she said, hey, Jack, forget it. You're a lover. And she was right.
Hmm.
So I am a lover, and I like loving, and I'm loving all over the place these days. And I love receiving love. And so there was the love of God. Interesting. And so I was attracted enough to go up to the pastor at the end of the sermon, which was unusual for me at the time, because I wasn't my gregarious, extroverted self. I was pretty introverted in these kind of situations. He obviously, I'm tall. You can't see this with me sitting. I was 6'3" in those days. So he knew that I was a newcomer. And I complimented him passive aggressively. I said, you have a great delivery.
Hmm.
What I really wanted to say, man, what you said really touched a nerve with me.
Yeah.
But you know, he took the moment. He must have felt something that this was right. First of all, he sent out his assistant pastor to bring out the book, the Search for Christ, Quest for Christ. It was written by a journalist who was looking, I forgot the name of, but he was looking to debunk Christianity and found nothing but proof. He gave me that.
Okay.
And he asked if they could lay hands on me and pray over me. And that felt good.
Hmm.
It just like, it just felt good that somebody actually cared about me. And they didn't know the troubles that I was in, but the fact, anyway. So, well, guess what? Now I found my new home, because from that point on, I went to service every week. And there's obviously also a selfish thought, because I had more opportunity to be in the presence of Shauna, who I still had not told how I felt about her.
Yeah.
And I actually never did. She actually said, I love you to me first.
Wow.
That was the only way to do it. I had the good sense not to be pushy. So yeah, I go to church every Saturday, and we still did the undercover Bible study. And I was more and more attracted by the faith. But what wasn't there yet, I was still an intellectual Christian, not an emotional Christian.
Hmm.
And that happened one day when I acknowledged the Lord as my Lord and Savior on a golf course. It just came over me. I think that's the Holy Spirit. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Because I'm standing there. It was a gorgeous day, and every time after I figured out there was a God, I always looked at the sky, the blue sky and the big clouds, and I was always saying, "My God, you created something really beautiful." This time I did it again, and all of a sudden it came over me. Jesus, I know you're up there somehow. I don't know much about you, but I know that you're my God. And as I'm saying this, I get goosebumps again. And it took a couple of services when something also happened that I did not plan and I didn't orchestrate. That church didn't have an altar call. They never asked people to come forward to whether they could pray for them or whatever. So at the end of service, I didn't know what an altar call was. You understand that, right?
Sure.
And Sean, we never talked about this because it was not something that Shauna and I never talked about it. So at the end of one service, I felt this force that pulled me out of my chair and made me walk up the left-hand aisle and go up to the pastor. And he asked me, "What can I do for you?" I said, "I want to give my life to Jesus."
Wow.
And the rest is I know only because Shauna was there. The congregation was already leaving. He took out a microphone and told. He knew a little bit about my background. He knew that I was a communist and an atheist, not much else. And he shared with the congregation what just happened, and everybody stopped, and there was hallelujahs and praises. I don't remember any of that.
Wow.
I was numb. That's how I became a Christian. There's one more thing that had to happen, and I would be remiss to not mention that because there was something still missing. I wasn't spiritual. I had the emotions, I had the knowledge, but I didn't really understand the concept of soul, and I just didn't understand. Shauna is very spiritual. What they have and how I can get it, and believe it or not, that required a divorce from Shauna. She it was 2.5 years ago. She decided that, and she was right about it, that us living together had become very, very tense for a number of reasons. I'm at fault, and she contributed, and that tension wasn't good for our daughter, who is very, very, very sensitive. By the way, she demanded to be baptized when she was 8 years old. We never talked about it.
Wow.
I knew there was an end. I know that God hates divorce, but not the people who are divorcing or being divorced. He hates divorce because there's a lot of pain and struggle involved. That's my interpretation, even though the Bible says different, but I'm sorry. He didn't hate this divorce. I know this for sure, because as I'm driving from Atlanta, Georgia, where we lived, to Austin, Texas, where my daughter lived and where I could find a shelter, I was in tears, but I didn't cry very long. And then I lost something that I spent all my energy on when I was married, taking care of the family, working, taking care of the home, and just like making sure that they're happy, and which resulted in me not being present, and it resulted in me just being, a servant as my love language, just serve them. And it was somewhat mechanical. So now I'm by myself, it's gone. So what do? It's just me and God. I started praying. I started looking into myself. I started doing roughly what we just did with more detail.
Yeah.
And at one point, I actually started praying every morning, and I do this now every morning. So I get up and I say my prayers. There's music involved. There's some deep breathing involved, but these prayers are very intense, and they start with gratitude for the Trinity. By the way, my daughter's name is Trinity.
Wow.
Gratitude for their existence and what they have done in my life. That sets me on a positive path, and then gratitude for everything that I have, and all the friends that I have, the churches that I actually attend 2 churches these days, and all the good friends and everything that I have, and then before I pray a little prayer for myself, and I'm not very demanding. I just pray by name for everybody who is important in my life, and guess who is at near the top of that list? Shauna.
Shauna, yeah.
What she did. First of all, the divorce there was only one attorney involved, and that's the attorney who takes our decisions to the court. And Shauna came to the same conclusion I did, that for me to deny the love that I had for her would be denying myself, and denying the role she played in my life. Absolutely critical. And she came to a similar conclusion, and they sent me at one point a 10-point letter message with gratitude for all the things that I had done for her. And from that point on, we still acknowledge that we still love each other.
Yeah.
As not in the intimate sense, and there's not going to be a reconciliation, but we love each other. And I still have my wedding band. When I go to church, I put it on because she's there with me.
Yeah.
And we have said I love yous to each other, and personally, with her would-be new husband present, who is on his way to become a Christian himself, because he said the other this is I think almost the best part of that others might be able to relate to of my story, because the other day when we were on the phone, he said goodbye and he said, "I love you."
Wow.
That's the way you got to live.
Yeah.
That's how Jesus wanted us to live. Just love one another.
Love one another. Love one another.
Like you love yourself.
Yeah.
And I have learned to love that self that I am today. Before that, but because I know I'm on the right path, and
well, that's the power of the gospel at work. And Jack Barsky, thank you so much for sharing your story of God's redemptive work in your life. To learn more about Jack and to order his book, Deep Undercover, which we didn't even get to talk about, but read the book, visit jackbarsky.com. I'm Michael Goering, and this has been Life Perspectives. Until next time, thanks for watching.